Welcome. What causes people, leaders, directors, managers, and sales professionals in the business world to evolve from average people and professionals to successful professionals in the pursuit of excellence? We will examine how to grow people and professional figures and how to change ourselves into real professionals of excellence in this intensive training, entering this in-depth development of something so essential in human relationships such as motivation techniques, knowing that motivation is the final reason for human behavior. What does the participant gain in this course? How will he/she benefit? In the development of knowledge, skills, and training to raise their level of efficiency when using motivation as a tool to convince and influence people. The participant will benefit from being able to handle the most sophisticated and effective motivation techniques adapted to our time and the needs of the next decades in the 21st century. Welcome, I'm David, consultant and manager of the firm García-Lomas and Allen-Perkins, the ADO Corporation. For more than 15 years and nearly 1,000 days, I've been developing commercial-oriented programs, Salesforce training in the development of leadership and management in all types of multinational organizations in the business world and all types of economic activity. We will develop this program through 4 important chapters. 1. What is to motivate and human nature? 2. The 8 primary motivation and the Maslow's pyramid. 3. Analysis of people's motivations and attitudes. 4. The relationship between motivations, attitudes, and behavior. Let's get started. 1. What is to motivate and human nature? According to the dictionary, to motivate is to give cause or reason for a thing, and also motivation is the reason why we do something, and it is what influences what a man does, what a woman does. All of our interpersonal relationships, leadership roles, and business operations are founded on human behavior. And if my capacity to persuade and influence people is judged by my ability to convince and influence people, and my leadership performance is measured by the results of my collaborators, then influencing people's attitudes and my collaborators' attitudes will be a part of my success. Management is people, said Peter Drucker. Leadership, direction, management is people. Orders are not enough to motivate because we all act based on our own goals. Everyone acts for their benefit, hence the collaborator is the director's first client. He will buy his ideas if he sees his wishes fulfilled if we know how to motivate him. People nowadays don't run because we tell them they have to run, because people can run and put in 50-60% of their running capacity, and with that they cover their simplest obligation. But your leader won't go very far with people like that. Today there is a new concept, the concept of direction through motivation, where if I want to influence someone, both as an individual and as a leader, we must be able to put our objectives in line with the different objectives of the different people, their different collaborators. Hence, not to orders and yes to suggestions, because this way of convincing, influencing, leading is a subtle way of leading people, since how can I, your collaborator, will reject your suggestions if it is my own interest and desires that are at stake? Therefore, not to the instruction chain and yes to the conviction chain. We therefore have to know as soon as possible, as individuals and leaders, the motivations, desires, problems for which they act, to be able to motivate them, because motivation is the final reason for human behavior. Therefore, our objective as leaders, managers, directors, sales professionals is to know as soon as possible the motivations of other people and those of my collaborators. The question that arises now is, And what is selling? Selling is convincing others of the benefits of my ideas, proposals, suggestions, measures, etc. We all sell ideas apart from the leaders on a daily basis. My success depends on the work of my collaborators. The problem of the market today and tomorrow are not in production, they are in the people, in men and women, in our colleagues, partners, collaborators. People are the main asset of the organization and are the determining factor in improvements in the organization results. The question is the experience acquired up to now sufficient to carry out this work of directing, managing men, women, people? Someone will say, I have 15 or 20 years of experience in management. And the question that can be asked is it 15, 20 years or a year repeated 15, 20 times? Is traditional leadership effective? And will it continue to be in the future? There are as many different types of leadership that exist as there are people to lead. Because each of us is unique, there is a general principle that applies to each man or woman, and that principle is the direction through motivation. Therefore, sell ideas. They will buy my ideas if they see their own wishes fulfilled, if we know how to motivate them. Since motivation, I insist, is the final reason for human behavior. Now I would like to use an interesting quiz, which is called What knowledge do you have about human nature? And which is closely related to the theme of this class, motivation to convince and influence people. We'll observe a series of statements, 10 in total, and after giving them some thought, we'll answer each one with a rather correct, if I believe the answer is correct, or a rather incorrect, if I believe the answer is incorrect. Here is a small clarification. We do not simply put correct or incorrect as an answer in the 10 statements, but rather correct or rather incorrect, because when dealing with human beings, saying only that the answer could be correct or incorrect will be a limitation when we speak about human factor. As human beings, we are infinitely more complex, and therefore there may be exceptions that will justify another type of response. Let's go into the questionnaire of human nature. And we go with the first statement that says, 1. Being good observers, the first impression we receive from a person will allow us to establish a correct opinion on their character. What do we think? It is correct or incorrect? And the answer is incorrect. But why? Because we speak of a first impression, and when we speak of that mystery that we human beings are, having only a first impression to get all the information and guide ourselves by it, it is not enough. Also, a long time ago I had an English partner, Mike, and I remember him telling me that there is an English saying that goes, to get to know a person well, you have to eat meals together with him up to consuming a ton of salt. Imagine the times that you will have to eat with that person in meals together to get to consume 1 ton of salt. Therefore, it takes time to get to know people well, because human beings are truly complex. 2. Almost all collaborators in appropriate conditions, situations, not only accept but also seek responsibility. What do we think? The answer is correct. But why? Well, this goes to show that there is, sometimes on the part of the management class in some companies, a certain distrust about the human beings who collaborate with it. What's more, appropriate conditions, that is, when the environment and motivation are appropriate. Therefore, you have to believe more in people, because if you don't believe in people, maybe you mistrust yourself, and that will not be rational nor productive. 3. If someone does not look in your eyes, it's usually a sign of dishonesty. And what do we answer? Incorrect. lack of dishonesty, lack of honesty, for not looking into your eyes. That's too much. It may be that the person is distracted. It can be an expression of shyness, that the person might be wondering what to say next. 4. If motivation is important for the 80% of a group, you can be sure that it will also be important for the remaining 20%. The answer is incorrect. Human beings are very differentiated in motivations, and what is a strong motivation for one person may be of very little value for another. 5. From the race, class, or nationality of a person, we can deduce conclusions about his/her character. What do we think? The answer is incorrect. We speak of conclusions as something definitive in a specific person. Race, class, the nationality are great generalizations, and in the declaration we go from the general to the particular of a concrete and singular person. What's more, each human being is a species in itself. Human beings are very differentiated. The character of a person is something educational, and the family and the environment influence the person. And we go with the sixth statement. 6. If someone firmly shakes our hand, you have to think that he/she has an active temperament. What do we think? Incorrect. Not necessarily. It is a topic, and people cheat with topics. It could be that you are just squeezing that person's hands to make a good impression, without necessarily being active. 7. There is a relationship between our writing, calligraphy, and a person's temperament. What do we think? The answer is correct, but only an expert can find that relationship. It seems that the features of our writing, like our way of dressing, reveal intimate aspects of our being for a good observer. 8. The laws of logic give us revealing knowledge about the reasons for human behavior. What do we think? Here the two answers fit curiously. First incorrect will be the answer, and then correct, and I will explain myself. If only logic is incorrect, but if well-applied empathy is added to logic, then the answer will be correct. Because the man, the woman of the 19th century and earlier times was emotional rational, but the man, the woman of the 21st century should be rational emotional. The great topic of the 21st century is that we are all rational emotional. Then the first statement will be incorrect and then correct. And the ninth statement says, the ability to develop a relatively high degree of imagination, ingenuity, and creativity in solving the problems of the company, of the organization, is widely, not narrowly distributed among the group of employees of the company. The answer is correct. As we have already said, we must believe more in people and also create the right environment in the organization. 10. It is generally a fact that people with a great moral strength are physically strong. And this is incorrect. Well, it is enough to remember the figure of the Mahatma Gandhi, who liberated India as big as a continent from England, without cannons or army, and just with a policy as not very aggressive as the non-violence. Mahatma Gandhi, a moral giant, but a human wrench, although that could be disputed. Let's make a summary of the questionnaire. What we want to say is that from now on, we will have to look for new ways of evaluating and judging people. Do not be guided by topics or generalization, as this is a topic-oriented questionnaire. And if you have intimate knowledge of each person, you will notice that every one of us is unique. Senior managers of multinational companies spend a high percentage of their time with their people. The best investment of the director's time as leaders is getting to know his people, get to know her collaborators. And as Peter Drucker said, management is people. 2. The 8 primary motivations and the Maslow's pyramid. There have been throughout time many attempts to encode, decipher the different motivations that drive human acts. And a definitive answer has not yet been found, but today we are going to propose a truly practical model that gives a good explanation to the reasons that condition human actions. The model we propose is called the 8 primary motivations. And not in order of importance, because this will depend on each person. But if following a random order, the 8 primary motivations are: 1. Safety, security. All of us with a greater or lesser force yearn for security. That is expressed in a very different ways and what changes with age. 2. Comfort, health. The line of least effort. There is nothing more comfortable than a full state of health, without any aspect that bother us, and if with a feeling of fullness. 3. The benefit. It is not necessary to go to greater lengths to explain it and express its strength for the vast majority of people. Also remember that there is only benefit in something if there is a need satisfied. Here we will quote Friedrich Herbert, a renowned psychologist who became one of the most influential people in business administration and management, who developed the theory of hygiene factors and motivators, motivations. According to Friedrich Herbert, a motivator is that whose presence motivates, but a hygiene factor is that whose presence does not motivate, but its absence demotivate. Attention money could be sometimes a hygiene factor. Example, that economic improvement that you waited for a long time, when it arrives, sometimes it arrives too late and to a lesser extent than expected. In addition, the galloping inflation is the economic improvement. Therefore, this increase in money, salary, is not a motivator, it's a hygiene factor. But you have to do hygiene because if not, demotivation could appear. 4. The prestige, the ego, our ego side, is an inexhaustible source of motivation for human beings. If we analyze why we do many things in life, surely deep down we will find this motivation of prestige with all its various facets. 5. The desire for knowledge. Curiosity belongs to this type of motivation. Knowing and understanding traits of the conscious soul in which humanity is currently is a strong motivation, a strong desire in evolved people. 6. Self-conservation or survival. Hugely basic motivation. Well, what will we not do to preserve ourselves and survive? 7. Sympathy, support, appreciation. Important motivation that affects relationship between human beings. 8. Love, with different expressions ranging from the sex appeal, the sexual appeal, basic instinct, the love of ideas, things, people, the love of ethical and aesthetic aspects. One must not only be ethical but also aesthetic, said the prophet. And the love to that search in human beings concerning the Plato's 4 archetypes, the longing of every human being for the good, the beauty, the truth, and the justice. The search for the good, doing the good. The search for beauty, the beautiful, feeling the beauty. The search for truth, the true. Develop the ability to discriminate, separate the error from the truth. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, that said Jesus Christ. The search for the just, justice, loving justice. And now that we've covered the 8 primary motivations, the question is, why are the questioning techniques so important in life in general, in the business world, in negotiations, sales, and in leadership? Well, because with a good questioning technique, you can get to find out what is the motivation mix of the different people and different collaborators and clients, and thus be able to apply the golden rule of motivation that says, appealing to a strong motivations is positive, works, while appealing to weak motivations is a complete and total waste of time. How many times I have been wasting my time, and how many times have others wasted their time with me, unknowingly appealing to weak motivations, making unconfirmed false assumptions, since assumptions are the mother of all fools. In other words, how many times do we act on unchecked assumptions, and too late we realize how wrong we were by not confirming checking our assumptions? Know the different motivations of your different interlocutors, clients, friends, etc., and respect them, because people, human beings, always tries to carry out motivations. Now I'd like to present an interesting exercise in which you respond the following questions. What are the different positions, levels of the people with whom you relate from within your organization and outside your organization? Choose 2 or 3 people in each situation, and then indicate 3 most characteristic motivations and in order of importance of the people chosen in the previous question. Stop the video and take some time to answer. How was the exercise? Let's now go into the hierarchy of motivations, Maslow's staircase or pyramid. For this we are going to develop a truly revealing and clarifying approach to the reasons behind human behavior. And the question is how to motivate people immediately. Since motivation and human behavior go together, it will be convenient to remember the mental process that is concerning the motivations and that consists of I think something and I feel that something is correct and it suits me, and then the intentions to carry it out, and with it arises in me the will to do it, lowering the intention and the idea from the world of ideas to the world of reality with my will. The human soul has thinking rooted in the brain. It has a feeling expressed in the human body by everything rhythmic and metabolic. And it has a will, the operating will, expressed in the human body throughout our legs and arms. And if I think and feel something as good to do, then the intention to carry it out slides under my thinking and feeling, the will. Think, feel, will. Returning to the question of how to motivate people immediately, or how to move others, the answer cannot be other than through the different motivations. We have already talked about the 8 primary motivations as an analysis tool about what it is that drives human beings to act. Now we enter to the hierarchy of motivations, also known as the Maslow ladder or pyramid. Maslow's pyramid is made up of 7 differentiated steps of levels. And walking from the first step or the base of the pyramid upwards, this theory informs us of the fact that while a person is not sufficiently covered, they are satisfied with the motivations coming from the first step or level in which they are, he or she will not react or want to pass before the stimuli coming from the motivations of the next level. Likewise, until we are sufficiently covered that second level, we will not be in the position to react, be called upon, or be stimulated by the motivations coming from the next level. And so on, we will go up those steps or levels of the Maslow pyramid, only reacting to the next level when I'm sufficiently satisfied with the motivations of the previous level. And what are those levels? Well, we are going to describe them. 1. The first level is called the level of physiological needs, also known as the level of homeostatic needs. We refer to meeting basic needs needs such as drinking, eating, covering fatigue, sex or basic instinct, etc. They are the homeostatic needs. Homeostasis. These are all the automatic efforts that our body makes to stay in a normal, correctly balanced state. An example. The great Lord who lies in the bed of pain dying, and next to him is only his faithful servant, his lifelong companion, Bautista, his butler. The Lord in a thin voice says to his servant, his steward, Bautista, I will leave you my house in Madrid, the apartment in Paris, the mansion I have in Rome. I leave you my collection of high-end cars. I leave you my yacht. I leave you my stable of race horses. I leave you my bank accounts, my stocks, treasure bills. But please, Bautista, stop crying. The steward servant, between tears and laments, says to the Lord, my Lord, if I could do something for you? And the Lord answered him, yes, yes. And Bautista says to the Lord, what? What can I do for you, my Lord? And the Lord in a rattle answered, stop stepping on the oxygen tube, Bautista. I'm suffocating, you bastard. 2. Level 2 is called the security level. We no longer live in the jungle, in a cave. Today the security is expressed by money in the bank, a safe job, retirement programs, etc. 3. Level 3 is called the social stage, or the stage of loving and belonging. It refers to the maintenance of affectionate relationships, the search for friendship, the loved one, the search for a boyfriend, girlfriend, family, and also a place in the group. 4. Level 4 is called status or prestige, the ego, self-esteem. Currently it is a plurality of needs, and therefore, as we have already indicated, prestige is an inexhaustible source of motivation for human beings. The desire for freedom and independence belongs to this level, as does the desire for reputation and prestige. 5. Level 5 is the level of personal fulfillment, and it could be expressed as the desire to become all that one is capable of becoming. And if someone said that the human being is a cosmic being, imagine then the potential that we carry within ourselves. 6. Level 6 is the level of knowing and understanding, the level of the conscious soul of the current age, in which all human beings are now living. Conscious soul with traits not only to know and understand, but also to synthesize, to intuit, to tolerate. The desire for knowledge, curiosity belongs to this level. The attraction for the mysterious and the unknown. The need to investigate and explain the unknown is a fundamental factor in human behavior. 7. The last level. It is called the level of ethical and aesthetic needs. You not only have to be ethical but also aesthetic, as the philosophers said. It is expressed by the need to have order and balance. It is the search for the good, the beauty, the truth, and the justice. They are the four Plato's archetypes, which express the desire of human beings for the search of the good, doing the good, the beauty, the beautiful, feeling the beautifulness, of the truth, separate the error from the truth, of the justice, fairness, being fair. Let's see an example. Possibly all of us in our youth will have read the masterpiece of a classic author of universal literature named Daniel Defoe, and his masterpiece called Robinson Crusoe. In this work we see how the author, when developing the story of Robinson Crusoe on the island to which the sea took him when his ship was wrenched, unconsciously follows the same steps of the different levels that we have just developed of the Maslow's pyramid. What does Robinson Crusoe do when he wakes up on the beach where the waves of the sea, after wrenching his ship, has thrown him? Well, the first thing Robinson does is that he feels hunger and thirst because he had passed out for days. He finds a natural water source with which to quench his thirst and climb at a palm tree where he picks up a coconut that he opens and eats with delight. Robinson is in stage 1 of physiological homeostatic needs. Once his hunger and thirst are satisfied, Robinson realizes that on this island to which he has arrived, there are maybe beasts, savages, or cannibals. This leads Robinson to build a small fortress with the wrench which had reached the beach that offers him security in the face of possible dangers that may threaten him. Robinson is now at level 2 of the hierarchy of motivations. Now Robinson feels safe, and then arises in him the desire to maintain a relationship with other human beings. But having no other person, he entertains himself playing with a little spider, and that now constitutes his friend, his strength. But one day, walking along the beach, he discovers the footprints of a human being, which leads him to meet his new companion, an aborigine who, upon discovering him one Friday of the week, Robinson baptized him with the name of Friday. Now Friday lets him cover stage 3, the social stage of Maslow's pyramid. From here on, Robinson gets the feeling that he must be the master, and he begins in a way to consider Friday his servant, which causes him problems with his friend. Robinson is in stage 4 of status or prestige, and so on. A. If a man, woman is hungry or thirsty, will risk his life, that is, his safety, to satisfy her hunger and thirst. B. In general, people will have no interest in gaining prestige if she does not have their security well covered. And C. If a person has not sufficiently reached an earlier stage in the Maslow's pyramid, will not normally respond to motivations coming from higher stages. The message to our teams of collaborators and professionals, and to all kinds of people with whom we interact in our daily lives is, you have to know where they are, at what stage people are, to motivate them. 3. Analysis of people's motivations and attitudes. What is behind human needs? Now we are going to develop 2 important projects which will allow us to first analyze the motivations of a person to whom we want to carry out a motivational analysis, to know if there are differences and how to correct them, as well as to know their motivational strengths. And if we do this analysis of motivations of a person, it will also be convenient to develop the analysis of the attitudes of him, her, which will strengthen or weaken the motivations of the person. Motivation analysis. When talking about what is behind human needs, we enter a vital tool to be able to deepen and structure something as subtle as the impulses that animate our actions, both in this professional world and in a particular world. There is something truly revealing in this world of business and sales, and it is that behind the human needs, with their interests, desires, concerns, dissatisfactions, likes, etc., underlying the different motivations which are what makes us move. We have already talked about the 8 primary motivations as an analysis system to know what is behind every human act, and I remind you that we classified them not in order of importance, if not in a random order, whose true order will depend on each person in 1. Safety, 2. Comfort, health, 3. The profit, 4. The ego, the prestige, the ego side, 5. The desire of knowledge and knowing and understanding, curiosity, 6. Self-preservation or survival, 7. The social, sympathy, support, appreciation, 8. The love of ideas, things, and people. and that in every human being there is a mix of those motivations which largely determine our behavior. We are going to enter into an important analysis about the motivations that drives our actions, remembering that motivation is the final reason for human behavior. What moves us? The different motivations that drive our actions. Let's see the following scheme about motivation analysis. In the first column, we list the 8 primary motivations. In the second column is the evolution of your strengths from 1 to 5. In the third column, the satisfaction provided by the position, the current situation, or my alternative from 1 to 5. The fourth column marks the differences between columns 3 and 2. In the fifth column is the importance of balance, the importance of eliminating negative differences. In the sixth column is priorities in action. In the seventh column, there are the activities to solve or actions to take. Once we have developed the scheme, as we are indicating in the first column, we list the 8 primary motivations in the same order indicated above. And as an example, we are going to develop different assumptions, and then each of us can apply them to our own situation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Safety, 5, 3, -2, plus, high. If it is decline, give guarantees, failure, it will not happen again. Profit, 4, 3, -1, plus, high, support for the client, with promotion, special promotions. The prestige, 5, 2, -3, plus. Give training, high key customers. The social, 3.5, 4.5, +1. Okay, no problem. And so follow each one of us with the analysis of the motivations of the person, client, collaborators, whenever sellers or distributors, etc. Remember that this motivation analysis seeks to find solutions to problems of lack of motivation in the people with whom you are related, knowing that the lack of proper motivation leads the person to low performance and their loss of energy and interest, and to abandon us over the time. The question is, what moves us? And the answer is motivation. Analysis of the attitudes of the people. Attitudes change motivations. We are going to develop the analysis of attitudes of the person, which completes the analysis of motivations. We have already pointed out that the motivations of human beings are always about realizing. So what can we do when we need to change or modify any motivation? And the answer is acting through the attitudes that reinforced or weaken the different motivations. With the analysis of attitudes woven into a subtle world, since as we have already indicated, by strengthening or weakening motivations through the different attitudes that we develop in the different situations in which life places us, we see that attitudes are classified into 1, positive or negative, 2, rational or emotional, 3, active or passive, according as they manifest to us from one side or the other. People's attitudes are either one thing or the other. In other words, there is no middle ground. My attitude in a situation, a given situation, either it is positive for me or it's negative for me. It is either rational or emotional depending on its composition. Either it is active or it is passive depending on whether it is manifested or not. And we must remember something vital in life and in the business world about human beings, and that is people's attitudes are expressed through our non-verbal communication. Let's go into an attitude analysis model now. Attitudes. As we can see from the scheme, 8 columns appear. The first column is to expose attitudes towards that is, the attitudes that a person can have towards any aspect, subject, person, situation, thing, etc., whose persons we are going to analyze. In the second column, we determine on a scale of 1 to 5 points if that attitude is positive or negative, 1 being the most negative, 5 being the most positive, with intermediate scales if necessary. In the third column, we indicate if the attitude is rational or emotional, also scoring on the scale 1 to 5 points as in previous column, with 1 being the most emotional and 5 being the most rational. In the fourth column, we determine if the attitude we analyze is active or passive, with the same scale of 1 to 5 points. In the fifth column, we define if there are possibilities of change if it is convenient. We also set the scores from 1 to 5 points. The sixth column speaks us of the importance of the position of the person for the action, for the negotiation, or the subject in question, also scores 1 to 5. The seventh column speaks to us of the priorities of change if necessary. And finally, the eighth column is to indicate, in the light of the analysis that we are carrying out, which are the actions to take or necessary efforts to make. Let's put some practical examples. First column, with a brainstorming with the group, draw a long relationship on towards what we have attitudes in a certain situation. For example, I choose to analyze the attitudes of a certain salesperson on my team, in case I have to solve an attitude problem in my man or woman. Attitudes that are emerging are 1. Your attitudes towards the company, 2. Being a seller, 3. Prospecting, 4. The prices of your products, 5. and more. And in the analysis, the following appears in columns 1 to 8. Attitudes to the company. Attitudes positive or negative 2. Attitudes rational or emotional 4. Attitude active or passive 5. Possibility of change 5. Importance to the position 5. Changed priorities high. Actions to take promotion. Attitude towards being a seller. Attitudes positive or negative 2. Attitudes rational or emotional 3. Attitude active or passive 4. Possibility of change 2. Importance to the position 5. Change priorities high. Actions to take, give special tasks. Attitude towards prospecting. Attitude positive or negative 4. Attitude rational or emotional 5. Attitude active or passive 5. Possibility of change blank. Importance to the position 5. Change priorities blank. Actions to take, it is the future. Their prices, and thus continue analyzing the seller. As individuals and professionals, we must be aware of others' people motivation and attitudes, as they are determinants of the quality or lack of thereof of the behavior that our collaborators generate. The relationship between motivations, attitudes, and behavior. Attitude is transmitted. Attitude communicates. Attitude makes the difference between an ordinary person and an excellent person. Now we'll look at something as important as the attitudes and its value. To constantly be a positive person in the face of life, searching for the good side of things, not allowing ourselves to be depressed by the adversities that life throws at us, and to rise 1,000 times if necessary every time circumstances knock us down. A person of authentic value is thrown by circumstances and gets up immediately and continues to fight. Never lose the will to fight. Fight against the current if necessary. Fight with joy and enthusiasm. Being cheerful is your option. You are responsible for your state of mind. What differentiates the best and the worst that is in you as a person is your state of mind, and never lose hope, never despair. We live in a society where the results we obtain is especially valued, but the effort we put into achieve it is essential. Therefore, fight, putting all the effort, remembering the value of persistence, perseverance. The human being is the bearer of eternal values, of the soul, of the spirit. Let's try to be kind to others, to be tolerant, happy, motivated, being good listeners, being good active listeners, showing our good education with others, trying to be good people, and always with a positive attitude towards life. Now we are going to go into more depth about the title of this chapter, the relationship between motivations and attitudes. Let's start by defining what we understand by motivation, attitudes, and human behavior, and then see how they are related and how they affect our behavior, both in our private life and in our professional life. Motivation. What is to motivate? It is to give cause or reason for something. It's the reason we do something, and it is what influences what the man, woman does. Attitude. It is the way of contemplating or of judging a situation, a fact, etc. External reflection of the motivation of the human being. It is a mood, a feeling, somehow manifested on many occasions through our body language, our non-verbal communication, the NVC. Behavior. It is my way of acting based on my motivations and my attitudes. And let me point out that it is difficult to distinguish between motivations and attitudes. Finally, aptitudes. It is the latent and patent faculty or capacity that a person has to perform an act. Let's take an example. Let's imagine that we want to represent a man, and for this we draw the following scheme. In the inner cycle, we are going to represent the core of that man with his skills and motivations. Surrounding that inner cycle, we draw an outer cycle, where the attitudes of this man appear, which in principle can be positive or negative. Let's imagine that the man is a young nonconformist, an anti-establishment. This man has basic motivations, money, economic benefit, etc. And his attitudes towards banking is positive for him and negative for society, as he considers banking unfair and exploitative. This young man is walking down the street and realizes that he is passing in front of a bank. His motivation for money when he saw the bank is reinforced with his positive attitude for him and negative for society, of hating capitalist banking, as we already said, for considering banking unfair and exploitative. His motivation for money and his negative attitude towards the bank makes that when he sees the bank in front of him, the bank is a stimulus, which puts him in movement towards the bank, thinking that the time has come to rob it. In other words, his motivation for money, reinforced by the negative attitude towards the bank that he is now seeing, makes him develop a behavior that leads him to want to rob the bank, acting the bank as a stimulus. But at that moment, the figure of a heavily armed security guard emerges from the entrance of the bank, who looks at him in the eye, guessing his evil intentions, and at that moment, the attitude that our young anti-system develops towards the figure of the security guard with his machine gun, that negative attitude for him, for what the guard can mean if he shoots him or takes him prisoner, his negative attitudes towards the security guard slows down his motivation for money and prevents him from robbing the bank. Summarizing, 1. Everyone has motivations. 2. To show that motivation, I need a stimulus, in this case, the bank. 3. But this stimulus can be strengthened or weakened by people's attitudes. Another example, a participant who attends sales training, motivated by the opportunity for his professional development. But shortly after starting his training, a reprimand or negative action from his coach towards him changes his attitudes and stops his motivation for the training in which he has just started. We already pointed out that human beings always try to carry out our main motivations, and therefore there is a motto, and it is know and respect the motivations of others. So how can we act on the motivations of others if, as we have just said, human beings always try to carry out our motivations? Well, acting on the attitudes of the person, reinforcing or slowing down throughout their attitudes his motivations. And how to classify the attitudes of people? As we have already indicated previously, 1. Attitudes can be positive or negative. 2. Attitudes can be rational or emotional. And 3. Attitudes can be active or passive. Whenever the attitudes are positive or negative, constitutes an instantaneous and simple act. The fact that the attitudes are rational or emotional, and active or passive, is a behavior. That is to say, it is a process. The temporal process occurs in time and is a complex process, made up of various acts and elements. Therefore, the attitudes can be positive as well as rational and emotional, and active or passive, or negative as well as rational or emotional, and active or passive. Returning to the case of the young anti-establishment, the fact of being an anti-system, positive attitude for him and negative for society, and therefore his attitude is one of hatred towards the bank that he considers unfair and exploitative, reinforces his motivation for money and tries to rob the bank that is his stimulus. Therefore, positive, rational, active attitude. But when he sees the security guard with his machine gun, his negative attitudes towards what the guard means to him causes the break of his motivation for money and slows him in his intention action to assault the bank. Therefore, negative, rational, passive attitude. Remembering that what has been said so far, let us try to develop our empathy with others and always with a positive attitude and joy of living before life. We will continue in the future to expand and deepen all the concepts that affect human beings and the figures of professionals with their responsibilities in the business world, as well as the development of the topics that are always of interest both on a professional and personal level. Until a new occasion, thanks and cheers.